our guy, Brandon Gentili. That's how you pronounce it, right?
Yes, sir.
Gentili, nice.
Nailed it.
And he's he's a friend of mine. Met through the airwaves here through Bitcoin. He's a hockey guy. He's a better hockey player than I am. Are you a golfer?
No, you're a better golfer than I am. I used to golf a lot when I was a kid, but you're gonna have to teach me some golfing, or how to
What
golf.
hand are you, lefty or righty?
I'm lefty. I play hockey left, and I switched to left when I was like a teen, mid teens, and never looked back. And you know, I'm fairly athletic, so like I can go out there and play decently, but nowhere near where I would want to. I just don't have
Yeah.
time to play consistently, right? So
I
someday.
feel that a lot out on the course. After the 2020 stuff that happened, where basically golf was the only thing you could do around here for a while. There's a lot of people that got into golf, but I just look at some people and I'm like, I don't know how you could commit 6 hours to golfing like that. Like
Wild.
I just wouldn't be able to do it. Like I'm a decent golfer, and when I'm playing bad, it's just like I don't want to be out there. Even though it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful outside, you're drinking beers with your friends. It's still very frustrating when the ball's not doing what you want it to do.
100%. I mean, yeah. I'd be on the range more. I mean, like if I was actually golfing, I would just be on the range doing so much of that, like the repetition, like shooting pucks. Like when I was playing,
Yeah.
growing up, I would just shoot pucks in the driveway and shoot pucks, and you work on your skating when you could, but like just shoot pucks, like hit the putting green, hit the range. Like I would almost never play golf. If I was actually a golfer, I would rarely be actually like playing the course. I would just be on the range, trying different things on the range and setting up different scenarios,
Yeah.
but just constant reps because it's too slow for me to like go play a round of golf. I'm like I'm not getting reps. I'm not. It's like if you want to go drink with your boys, do like that's
Yeah.
that's a whole different world, right? So it's like to me, it's like if I'm trying to get better, it'd be a lot of reps. How can I get the most reps?
That's
So
fair. And I feel like the equivalent of reps in golf would be like around the putting green.
for sure.
I feel like anybody in that, and that's, a big part of what Brandon and I are going to be talking about going forward here today and in the future is the mindset stuff. And I really feel like if there's a lot of guys out there who spend a lot of time on YouTube watching try and change their swing at the range, just hammering balls. But if they just dedicated some time to the short game and the mindset, they could probably shave off quite a bit of strokes off of their game. So
Life's
yeah,
90% mental,
I'd
that's
say
why,
at least.
yeah. I mean, that's why I'll say this. So like one of the big mistakes I made in my life was you always hear that growing up, but I never paid enough attention. Like when I played for the U.S. national team, we actually had a sports psychologist, like kind of like on staff. Like, so I was very fortunate. I grew up an hour away from where the new U.S. national team in Ann Arbor was based in Michigan. And so kids around the country had to come live here and play here. And I didn't. Well, I mean, I still moved with a billet, but I was an hour away from my family. So I was very lucky in that sense. But we had, everything at our disposal. And I was scared as a 16-year-old to use a sports psychologist and things of that nature. And so that was one of my big regrets and mistakes I made in my life of not really understanding the mindset. Like I knew it was a thing and I should do it, but I was too scared and too fearful to do it as a teenager. And like, does it make me look weak? And looking back, like physically I had all the tools. That was not the problem at all. But the thing that kept me back at all was up here. It was the gray matter between the ears. And so that to me is all of life. I mean, it's Bitcoin, everything. Whether it's people don't think they have their agency in their life to even, or they're worthy of having Bitcoin, having agency in their life, being responsible for things. It's all up here. It's like like very few of anyone in life like physically is compromised to do Bitcoin or to do said things in life. But it's just what's up here that sets people apart. It's incredible.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think about all the time is like, again, if this thing kind of works out like we expect it to, I think there's going to be a lot of people who kind of go through the lottery winner thing where they
Absolutely.
win the lottery and they just kind of piss everything away because they're not
Mm-hmm.
ready for it mentally.
100%.
And
Yep.
if you look at the generational wealth around the world, like they have a lot of practice. They have all the tools. They've been through it before. They know who to use, where to put it, all these different things, how to manage it properly, or they have a whole team to do it. And I feel like Bitcoiners are going to come into all this. It's going to seem like sudden wealth, and they're just not going to know what to do with it. And I think there's going to be a lot of lost Bitcoin because of that. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today a little bit on the subject is because you used to be in real estate, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted. I was for 10 years.
What was your role? Like, what were you doing in real estate?
So I brokered stuff. So I probably did over five or 600 transactions in 10 years of brokering. So helping people buy and sell real estate. And then I purchased a lot of real estate myself, raised money on the investment side as well. Putting together deals, syndication or small syndication stuff. So, putting the money together, putting the deal together, or what people might think of as private placements, general partner, limited partner type of stuff. So it kind of saw the full gamut of real estate, helped people lease stuff as well. So, property management, doing all kinds of stuff. And then we had other people help with property management and doing that, because that's 90% of real estate. If you're an investor, is the management part. Buying and selling is fairly easy, there's paperwork and things of that nature. But so I kind of saw a lot of it for 10 years. And that was my roles, I guess, if you will, and had a team of people helping me do it. And that's partly why I left real estate, is because my family was growing. I want to spend more time with my family, but also you could see that the real estate itself was just part of the same ship, right? It was still on the Titanic that was going down. It was denominated in US dollars.
Yep.
And everything I was doing, it wasn't helping anyone else really. Like, it might have helped some tenants. Like, you're providing a nice place, you'd fix the place up, we'd refinance it and, pull the money out. We'd help some investors, you're helping yourself, but you realize, like, this isn't the greatest impact I can make. There's the wealth gap is growing and no one else behind you is doing it. Like, I would go on live streams, Facebook, Instagram, when those things came out 10 years ago. And I would just go live and talk about money and talk about, all these things, real rates and macro and all this different stuff that I had been learning from the Kiyosaki's of the world and the Jim Rickards and the Richard Duncans. And people were like super confused too. They're like, well, what do you do? Like, I'm in real estate, but I'm marketing. Like, I'm bringing people into my funnel. But like, it actually hurt my business a lot of times because people are very confused about what I did. And because, like, we're human. We're very simplistic at times in ways, right? So we were like, well, this guy's not talking about real estate 24/7. Like, does he even do real estate? I'm like, yeah, I've been doing it for 10 years. Like, like, and we just like, so then eventually I realized, like, okay, 2020 happened. My family's growing. I was just kind of confusing my base after 10 years of time. And it was just like, okay, I need to move into this Bitcoin world full time. And I don't know what it means exactly. I don't have anywhere to go. And I wasn't employable. Like, I had multiple businesses myself and I wasn't really employable as an employee. So I'm like, I'm open to things, but I just know I need to be in Bitcoin. I need to put my energy here. It's the one thing, because I was super political child growing up, that can help politics. It could help the wealth gap. I mean, all these things that people bitch about all day, every day, right? And it was like, this is the one thing I found in my life that could actually help all of these things come together. And so I want to be a part of it. And, here we are, whatever it is, 4 years later, 5 years later, and, writing about Bitcoin, doing stuff like this, podcasts, live streams, and being my, full-time thing while homeschooling the kids. And, my wife is an attorney and she does that a couple of days a week. So we have a really good schedule, what we do. And, so yeah, I feel very blessed. That's for sure.
Yeah. I got the same kind of feeling when I was working, as an accountant. I knew that was industry kind of similar to you. I just saw an end to it eventually, or it was going to have a big change, and I didn't know what my role in that would be, and I didn't really care to find out too much. And so I did the exact same thing. Is like, I don't know what I'm going to do in Bitcoin, but I need to spend time learning more so that if something comes up, I'm going to be ready for it. And that's kind of what it was. Like, when I first started my channel, I was doing like 10-minute live streams in the morning, mostly out of a need of trying to help people, just as a reminder, because there was like 4 or 5 people in my life that got hacked. And so they're really hard conversations to have. I didn't want to be having those every week. So I said, I'm going to get ahead of this a little bit. I'm going to start putting out some kind of PSAs. And then it just turned into this. That was like 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago now.
It's wild.
So 500 shows, where this is 493 today for the live streams.
Wow. That's amazing. It proved of work, I mean, like,
it takes a lot of work.
It
I
does,
said I'm
and
still shitty at it, but it's I'm better than I was.
But it's building up, like having a following though, and people that watch you and trust you, because I was just doing a Bitcoin banter with Tony Asbeck and Michael Jordan on the Bitcoin Way channel, and so we were just talking. Tony was like, do you get annoyed? Does it feel like you're talking about the same things over and over again, like all the shows that you do? He's like, you're on a lot of stuff, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, but humans. Like, going back to the reps, and that's why I was bringing up the reps, actually, because it was just on my mind. Like, what do you do when you're a kid? Like, shoot pucks when you're playing hockey, or if you're shooting hoops, I'm doing free throws, like over and over. I'm at the range over and over, I mean, anything you want to be better at. And that's how you change your paradigm, which, speaking about mindset, paradigm is a multitude of habits. So it's bigger than habits, right? It's more than one habit. So It's like, how do you change these paradigms or habits? You just repetition over and over and retraining your neural pathways. And so that's why we say a lot of the same things over and over again, because really Bitcoin can take a lot of work if you want it to, but it's very simplistic in its nature as well. So it's like just those reps, you need them. We all need them. Even people that have been in it for years like us, we're still learning, like we're still growing. I still watch the same things. I'll go back and watch things I watched 5 years ago. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense still. That, because we're different people. Does it still make sense, right? Like all these things. So anyway, it's fascinating.
So when you think about the paradigm then, because this is kind of a new term for me that I didn't know about until, the last year or two, I'd say, the paradigm. And you kind of talked about the importance of reps there. But like if you're trying to explain it to somebody who had never heard the phrase paradigm before, how would you do it? Because like when we're kids, and I think that's basically the environment as a kid. This is kind of how I see it. Is like the environment that you have as a kid, because it's constant repetition over and over again. Your name, this is who you are, this is what's going on around you. But I feel like as a kid, you're much more open, like you're much more of a sponge than you are now. It's easier for things to come in. And I feel like because of that, later in life, if you want to change those things, you have to work like 3, 4, 5x harder to try to change your state of mind there. So yeah, I mean that's a problem, and I think that the school is a big problem. Now you talked about homeschooling your kids. I think that's the best thing you can do in this day and age. But what would you like? How do you define the paradigm for people?
So, everyone would imagine knows what a habit is. It's just something you're kind of routinely doing, and you're not thinking about it. It's just like you said, like it's your name. You answer to it because you've heard it a million times, 10 million times in your life, right? So a paradigm is just a multitude of habits. So it's many habits put together, or it's like the filter that you put things through. So like if you hear things, so like, again, using Bitcoin as an example, if people have heard about the dollar their entire life, which most people have, then that's your frame. That's your paradigm. Everything you have in your life gets put through that frame. And so I'm actually going to try to pull up Bob Proctor, who's a good Canadian man, right? Yeah, I mean,
that's who I got the paradigm stuff from.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, he's amazing, and I had the privilege of meeting him like 15 years ago, and
really,
he's no longer. Yeah, and it was actually So it was right when I retired from hockey, actually, and I got into multi-level marketing, which is a really crazy story. I got into because I was very entrepreneurial, and like right as I got out, I retired, because I was getting hurt and things like that, and it was my head. And again, Bitcoiners, like we see 10 to 20 years down the line minimum. Like that's kind of what I have seen over 10 years, right? Like Bitcoiners always are thinking 10 to 20 years out minimum on average. And so I wasn't in Bitcoin yet. I was studying gold and silver and real estate and all this stuff as I'm retiring from hockey in 2012. And so I immediately get into like, okay, I'm gonna start a business and whatever. And Vima was the company at the time, which is, wild story, but it was like a natural, it was Vima and VEMMA.
Okay.
And it was like natural energy drinks. It was probably like the first of its kind at the time. I think it started in like 2010 maybe, or maybe 09, 2010. And I got in like 2011 probably. And so Bob Proctor was actually a part of that company because his wife was actually fairly high up in Vima, and it was a company based out of Arizona. And if anyone has been a part of multi-level marketing, again, very similar to Bitcoin in the sense that it gets trashed all the time in the public, right? And the governments hate multi-level marketing. They hate because it basically flips the pyramid scheme up on its head, where like government, traditional corporations are pyramid schemes. And so government, anything that like casts the legacy system as like the thing that's actually broken, the government can't stand it, right? And so multi-level marketing is like people that are above you can make more than them. Like that's the irony in all of it, is like you can't do that if you work at a regular company. You don't make more than your manager. However, if you sell more in a multi-level marketing company and there's different, whatever, you can make more than anyone above you. Like you're not capped, and I'm generally speaking, I don't know for every company, right? But so Vima was that way. Anyway, it was but Vima got massive because as everyone knows, social media was becoming very big at that time, 2010, 11, 12, 13, right? And so the kids, the youth movement with with the kids, and like college age kids and high schoolers blew up with Vima. Like it blew up. There was kids, I mean, tens of thousands of kids doing Vima, and the government actually ended up coming. This was like a year or two, because I did it for a couple of years, and then I got into real estate, and then real estate, which was one of my passions, really kind of took over everything. And in doing that multi-level marketing, I was like, doing okay, but it was, not like my favorite thing, but it got me into Bob Proctor, and I met Bob Proctor, and that's how I met him in Toronto. We were at a big event, and I got to meet him and Linda, his wife, at their home in Toronto, which is an awesome home, and like this huge library. Gave me a couple of his books, like a handful of the books he had in his library. And so that's where I started learning about the paradigm. And I was like, man, I wish I would have knew this when I was playing hockey. Yeah, right. Like, so that's why I was bringing that up earlier, of like the mindset and the paradigm, and like 90% mental, 10% physical. And I spent all my time on the physical part, the shooting the pucks and working out, and and like in looking the part, but I didn't spend much time on my mindset. Right. So it all came full circle, meeting Bob Proctor and everything. But to go back to, that's how I met him. But to go back to Vima though, the government a few years later, I think BK Barreca was the guy who started that company. And this is just a good lesson for Bitcoiners in general and everything. He had like 6 kids. They're in Arizona, whatever. The government ended up coming after him and like almost took down the whole company. He ended up like divorcing his wife, like all this stuff, because the government basically came in and was like, hey, like we don't like that there's kids and like minors and like all this stuff, because like they're just promoting the money making aspect of Vima and not the actual product, which the product, mind you, of course, as many multi-level marketing, they were great products. Like I knew tons of people that like Crohn's disease, all this stuff gone by using the vitamins and the energy drinks, whatever, like gone, like helping tons of people. And so they came in and like targeted certain people, targeted certain like meetings that were had, that was like, it was someone just talking about the money making proposition, and like destroyed the guy's life, pretty much, the owner, destroyed a lot of people in that. And it's like probably a year or two after that. If anyone's seen Alex Morton Mindset, he's got a huge Instagram following, a couple million followers. He's been massive for 15 years. He got his start in Vima. Alex Morton. Yeah, if you go look on Instagram, Alex Morton Mindset, he's a huge, personal development like influencer out there, young kid. He's probably like 35, something like that, or young guy, I should say. He's a guy now. But 15, 17 years ago, he was like a 20-year-old kid at Arizona State, got into Vima, and he blew up and he became massive, and he has millions of followers now. And so he was, a brilliant guy. But anyway, he's from that era as well, and he's from that. So if anyone knows him, some might know him. But so the government, again, the whole point was anything that exposes the government or like the existing system as flawed, the government can't stand, obviously, right? So Vima, multi-level marketing were one of those things, and they targeted because it was kids, because, multi-level marketing was always like 50, 60, 7-year-old people. Well, all of a sudden, a bunch of 17-year-olds were in it, and the government was like, whoa. Kids are driving around in, BMWs and like all kinds of stuff, and they're helping all kinds of people, and they're making money, and they were like, whoa, like, we cannot have this. And then attacked him and went right at him. It was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. And so I remember, like, again, a year or two later, it's like mid 2010s. I'm just like looking at it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, did this seriously happen? So anyway, that the paradigm part of it is so important, and that's where I learned it was from Bob Proctor. And it's just a multitude of habits at the end of the day, and it's a bunch of things that you filter your life through. So you have the thoughts, like, again, I would say multi-level marketing, and I'm sure there's many people that they're going to cringe, right when I say that, they have this cringe, and that's your paradigm. That what you've all heard about from the media, from family members, like, oh, like that's retarded, or whatever, right? Like, and so that's the paradigm that your thoughts are going through. So you have your conscious mind, which is the Bob Proctor part, where it's like you have 5 faculties, or your 5 senses, which every animal has: hearing, see, smell, taste, touch, and then you have your 6 higher faculties, which only humans have, not animals. Yep. So it's perception, will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. Your gut feeling, right? Going with your gut. And so most humans don't use those 6 higher faculties. They don't even know they exist. Some might talk about it here and there, right? But that's where it goes into your conscious mind, and then your paradigm is through that multitude of habits that are built up, nature and nurture, like you mentioned, Jor, and then that goes into your body. So like you have the thoughts, Bitcoin, boom, and someone like repels and recoils. Multi-level marketing, like, ooh, like Donald Trump, like this paradigm that goes through this thing, whatever that belief structure is, and then it goes into your actions, into your body. So now you play out those actions in real life, and then those actions become your results. And so that have your results in life. And then it kind of creates that feedback loop of back to like your thoughts and like how you think. So the only way to change really that paradigm and that gatekeeping, that is like, how do you actually act? Like when I hear Bitcoin, do I repel, or do I say, like, interesting, and you're open, and then you start putting in work to change that paradigm, or shooting more pucks, or or more golf swings at the range, and that starts to form the new neural pathways of, okay, I'm open to something else. Now I'm changing the actual molecular structure of my body, my brain, and I'm actually, creating new muscle memory and do it. But it's through repetition that you can change those habits, the multitude of habits, which become that paradigm at the end of the day.
I don't know if there's a bigger one than Bitcoin. Honestly, it's one that it seems people struggle with so much.
Hard to find.
I think it's because there's been so much repetition going the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Like from all the people, everything that you see throughout the day, it's like you see Bitcoin, it's always associated with something negative. It's never something positive coming out of it. It's always negative association there. And so that's part of it, is just, they know that too. Like the schools know that.
Oh, 100%. Yep.
And that's the thing with somebody like Bob Proctor, and Napoleon Hill is kind of the same way. He's like, this kind of stuff should be taught
that was his mentor.
Early age.
Yeah. That was Bob's mentor, right? Like Napoleon Hill,
exactly.
Right? Think and Grow Rich.
But he kind of took it to a different level, though, Bob Proctor, because I think he added that level of the paradigm, which Napoleon Hill kind of danced around a little bit, but he couldn't really put his finger on what that was.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's pretty wild. So sorry, go ahead.
So I was gonna say, that's how you know too. So Bitcoin, like Joe Manchin in 2014 talked about, hey, like we should have stopped the West Virginia senator in America, right? Like he was talking about, we should have stopped Bitcoin when we had the chance. And this is in 2014, right? So the governments knew about this, and in 2010, 2011, maybe there was a chance at stopping Bitcoin because it was so infantile at that time. There's not a ton of nodes, right, and a ton of miners. So that was the chance, and they knew it, and they didn't.
I wonder why they didn't.
It was probably just because it was like, okay, like, it's not the first time, right? It wasn't like, there was eCash, there's all kinds of other things. So I think it was like, okay, we'll see. And then, as everyone knows, the government's some, huge blob of things. So it's like, even if Joe Manchin saw it and he's barking up someone else's tree, or someone else that could do something, okay, like who's actually getting things done here? They're worrying about Obamacare at that time, the election, 2012, it's like, there's all kinds of things going on. And it's like, and at the time, again, Bitcoin was nothing, it didn't have a price, right? So in 2010, or is getting a price. So anyway, that was, I think that's why. But government, at the end of the day, they knew about it, but this is a signal in all of it. Like you just mentioned, the intelligence agencies, the government, politicians, there's a lot of smart people there. I know we talk about sometimes like, oh, these people are dumb. No, they know, but they know that they can't stop it now. So the only way to do it, like you said, is the paradigm. Create a paradigm in people's head, a belief structure that, like you said, you never hear anything truly positive about Bitcoin. Never. If the green movement really wanted green energy and renewable energy and a clean environment, they would have found Bitcoin very quickly, and they would have used it to their advantage, and they would have, change the entire environment of the planet. And the reason that we're still 17 years in fighting that is mind-blowing to me. But that's the signal in the noise, like you're talking about, that there's been endless FUD for so long because they can only psyop it. It's the only way you can get people to stop using Bitcoin is, can't kill it, but we can get people to not use it by creating a stigma around it, a paradigm that's negative. And they've largely succeeded for the most part, right? So work to do.
Lots of work to do. And I think one of the biggest detriments to Bitcoin right now is the crypto stuff. And I think that they know that too. They know how associated crypto is. So everything that could go wrong in crypto, they're always the first to spotlight it. And people just have this direct correlation, I think, between crypto and Bitcoin. So when they see something negative happening, like a rug pull or this or that, they automatically associate it with Bitcoin, which couldn't be further from the truth, honestly, like when you get down to the details of it. But that's kind of where we are today. So with real estate stuff then, because I feel like real estate's almost like the government's dream, the banker's dream, because that's what kind of keeps their whole system going. And even last week, we saw Fannie Mae say that they're now accepting Bitcoin as down payment for a house. And the first thing I thought of was like, good, Bitcoiners won't have to sell their Bitcoin. It's not going to flow back into the BlackRocks and the strategies. They're going to be able to hold on to it, but it's going to be custodied, but they can still use it without having to pay tax on it. But then I was like, well, it makes sense because, again, their whole system basically works on the housing system staying up, because when that starts coming down, that's when everything kind of starts to tumble with it. And it is I would say it's directly tied to the fiat system. You can't really own real estate without being a direct, being in a direct partnership with the banks and the governments in that way. And so with real estate, though, what I wanted to get your opinion on today, because this is something I've been thinking about a little bit. I titled the show today, Building the Citadel. And do you think there's going to become a point in time where Bitcoiners, even if they sold their house, sold their real estate, bought the Bitcoin, went down the rabbit holes, is there a way back to real estate for Bitcoiners? Like, are
Like
Bitcoiners going to be the
eventually,
ones who start owning
yeah,
property after on the other
for
side of
sure.
this?
Yeah, I think so because I mean, I thought about this a lot. It's I thought about a time where, hey, when does it make sense to get back into the legacy investment world? And I love real estate, so I mean, I think that's part of it, and it's when is it, maybe 20 years from now, I don't know, when does the return on, if there's still the US dollar in 20 years, like when does it make sense? Like, are we at a 15% compound annual growth rate at that point? Does that make sense to get into real estate and own an apartment complex and put your funds into an apartment complex where people are then paying you in Bitcoin? Are the tenants then paying you in Bitcoin? That to me is when I've said for a number of years now, when I will know that the business cycle is healed, or when the nature is healing, is that when there's tenants or people are paying in Bitcoin, you can offer a service and a lot of people are asking, hey, can I pay you in Bitcoin? That to me will be a big signifier of like hyper Bitcoinization in a world where, hey, this is rapidly speeding up. People are starting to realize what's actually happening. So yeah, to me, I think that's largely where we're headed. But again, when is that? Is it 10 years from now or 30 years from now or, something like that? I think it's inevitable, and it's what do you do with your Bitcoin? Again, you're gonna go trade it for other assets, goods, services, products, other assets at the end of the day. Because we still need housing, we're still gonna need these things, right? Businesses, and I think honestly, Jordan, we might have said this before in another show, but I do believe the next 10 years is gonna be massive because I think going to be enough Bitcoiners with enough amount of wealth, if that makes sense to people listening, 10 years from now. So like there's the first 5, 6, 7 years, people got really wealthy, but it was a smaller group of people.
Mhm.
And a lot of those people were cypherpunks or, whatever it was, or maybe people that just got lucky, or it was a number of different people. But the next 10-year span, which call it 2017, 2018 up until 2027, 2028, you have a lot of people that are going to have a pretty significant amount of Bitcoin, and enough of those people who are going to be sufficiently wealthy 10 years from now. And then those people will maybe not be what we think of as billionaires necessarily. They might be very, very wealthy, but you're still going to need to do things in life, right? You still need to obviously buy things, but you're going to want to maybe buy a business or two. You're maybe going to go into the halls of power and start defunding the government more. So like you're going to own a lot of assets because you're like, hey, I want to go do this, and I want to acquire more Bitcoin. I want to do something with this and give back. So I think that this next 10 years, starting from here and maybe 10 or 12 years from now, is going to be massive just because of the numbers that the ranks of Bitcoiners and how much wealth they will have.
Because that's one of the things too, is like with Bitcoin, I feel like there's a lot of people just kind of holding it for now, and they have these plans never to sell, but they're still going to be able to do things with it. And I was kind of maybe referring to the Bitcoiners in the sense of like most Bitcoiners dream of having their own citadel, like buying a big property of land and growing food on it.
Mm.
So it wouldn't necessarily be on like a investment return, but I see what you're saying there, because at some point, the a business or a rental property will generate more of a return than Bitcoin will. I don't know when that's going to be though. Like, I don't know if that's in 10 years or 100 years, honestly. And
Yep.
that's why I'm kind of hesitant to suggest like investing in anything other than Bitcoin, but like
Mm-hmm.
people
Yep.
still have to invest in themselves, invest in their family, because I think that's going to be a large component of this. And that's the other thing too. We talked about the mindset and how people will kind of go through the lottery syndrome where they're not used to having that wealth. But if you're somebody who's been talking about Bitcoin for the last 5 years and all of a sudden Bitcoin goes to 1 million, then 10 million, like you're going to need a little bit of protection there. And that might be a citadel, that might be increased security, building a bigger fence. Like, have you thought that stuff through? Like, are you going to just stick
Mm-hmm.
around where you are? Are you going to go somewhere else? What's the play?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that a lot. I mean, just where to go, what to do eventually. So yeah, that part of it, the personal aspect, and not the investment scenario aspect. Yeah, I thought about that a fair amount, and places around the Americas to go. I'm in Michigan, so going northern Michigan, things of that nature, right? Where there's just not as much chaos. I mean, the closer you go to cities, the more chaos is going to be naturally at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So, how do you protect yourself? And again, I do think that there's going to be a lot of people, because we're rapidly approaching this CBDC UBI world and slavery,
Yeah.
and digital IDs and health passports, and then the other direction is Bitcoin and freedom, basically. And that's going to really become apparent, like we just said, this next 10, 12 years, as people see the old system devolve into chaos and more chaos, and people can't afford things. I mean, I'm sure you too, but I've had conversations with people recently about AI, and they're really scared about the AI taking their jobs and all this stuff. And where are those people? Because there's a negative stigma on Bitcoin, because they've been psyoped out of it largely. Or is that the first thing they're going to be running to? Maybe not. Some people will, because they've heard, idiots like us rambling on about them for years. So like there will be some people, and it'll speed up, but it's going to take a little bit. It's going to take a little while. I think it's going to take another handful of years, 5, 6 years at least, for people to really start grokking that and putting two and two together while they're hurting. And because they're going to need pain. Humans largely learn because of pain. My dad said that my entire life. Like, pain is a great teacher, and it's hard to bring a horse to water and make him drink. And you have to touch a stove a lot of times yourself. And then eventually people start realizing, oh, those dummies that were talking about Bitcoin 15 years ago, like that was I probably should go down that road. Or maybe it clicks and like, hey, the government's been screwing me over so much. And that might be part of it too, Jor, honestly, where a lot of people want Bitcoin, not even because of themselves so much, but they're so, it's like indirectly for themselves, but it's the government's been, we have to separate money from state, is where I'm going, I guess, right? Like we had to separate, church and state. Now we have to separate money and state, because people are realizing that's the problem. That's the genesis of the evil. And so that to me, I think is yes. Do you have a plan going forward? Do you have some basic necessities to survive? Because I think you're going to have citadels, you're going to have freedom cities type stuff where Bitcoiners are moving to those places, and then you have other people that are wanting to come, and it's like, hey, you're only allowed, and it's an actual sanctuary city, not for dumb reasons, but it's for actually like, hey, do you want to actually be a productive member of society? What borders used to be like, do you actually want to come over across the ocean and be a productive member of society and assimilate to our culture? Or are you trying to rectify some other BS that's going on the other side of the world, and you're coming here because you want to LARP, and suck our assets away? And so that's the world that's, I think, diverging right now.
And the thing that kind of scares me about that, though, is because one side of that aisle, they're big believers in violence. Mm-hmm. And one side, Bitcoiners, I would say, are very much the opposite of that. And I still think that for the next 5 or 10 years, Bitcoiners are going to have their guard up quite a bit, both online especially, but also physically, like in the physical world. Because as you kind of mentioned there, the UBI, I think that there's a lot of people, though, who already know that they don't want CBDCs, that they don't want UBI. They've kind of known that for a couple of years now. It's been a hot topic around the political conversations. And I don't think that was the thing before. Like if you would have said, okay, we're going to have a digital version of money, people would have been like, okay, sign me up. I don't have to carry around cash anymore. But I do think that there's a large percentage of people now who see the dangers of UBI and digital identity and CBDCs, that I don't think they're going to go down that road. But that's what I don't know they're going to do. Are they going to go to gold and just kind of live like a caveman for the rest of their life? Or are they going to just use cash, even though a lot of the governments are trying to ban cash effectively? Or do they eventually go to Bitcoin? And that's what I don't really know. I don't see how that plays out exactly. But I mean, we're doing our best clearly every day here to try to wake people up who are kind of on the verge of that path, like kind of at the end of the path. They're going to decide, do they want slavery or do they want sovereignty? And that's kind of who we're talking to. But there's still a lot of people who are far back on that road, and it hasn't even crossed their mind yet that they're going to have to make a decision here in the next couple of years.
It's wild, Jor. I mean, I think of multiple things. I was reading the kids the Bible last night, one of the kids' Bibles, and they were talking about Exodus. They were talking about the Jews going from Egypt into the Promised Land and all this stuff, right? And when you read the Bible, especially a lot of the Old Testament too, you really get a sense of the people, they go away from truth and then they get slapped in the face, and then they go away from truth and then they get slapped in the face, and they go away, and it's like it's just constant over and over. And in there, and too, it says all this was their own doing. Humans, we tend to go against truth. We think we're God, going back all the way to Adam and Eve. We're like, I know better than God, which, call it, if you're not religious, maybe just call it ultimate truth, call it common sense, call it nature's law, like call it what you will. But I know that there is truth. There are physics in life. There are nature's law, like, there's, divine law, like all the things. And when you go further away from that, your life just becomes harder. Not to say you can't operate, and like you just die immediately struck by lightning because I went against truth. No, it's just, it makes your life harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. It's like, you're swimming up the current, and that's what a lot of people are realizing. But in there, the whole point with that was that it even says they didn't even realize that it was their own doing. They did not even understand. They couldn't even see that they kept like just dummying themselves over and over again. And they wouldn't humble themselves to realize they kept blaming other people. I'm blaming
Yeah.
Moses. I'm blaming God. I'm blaming truth. I'm going to rationalize my stupid actions because the truth is dumb. Okay, like, and it kind of goes back to the lottery mentality and like all these different mentalities that people have of, not humbling yourself and not saying, or just believing I'm the center of the universe in essence, where it's like, no, like I'm not, no one is, you're not, I'm not, none of us humans are the center of the universe. And that's what gets us into so many of these problems, into, again, the paradigm, all these different things of like believing things that aren't true, like knowing so much that isn't true. And it just causes you a ton of pain and heartache in your life. And there's something else I was going to say. What were you asking me? Because there's something else I was going to say about it, but that was the big one though.
I mean, what I want to ask you on that is like, because going back to Bobby P there, Proctor talks about all the time how people don't think of themselves that way. They don't think that they're the center of the universe, and that's their problem because they kind of suffer from NPC syndrome. So I guess there's probably two different takes on that. And I know that Bob was a fairly religious guy. He never really talked about any specific religion, but he talked about a higher power a lot. So I guess in that sense is like people, I think what Bob Proctor was referring to in that specific context was that people don't take enough agency. They don't think that they have any sort of control over their life, right?
Right. Even though you have free will, right? Like you have free will, and that's the whole point. It's like what you have free will. So like, you're right. I mean, like maybe I'm not using it in the best way, that's saying, because you're right, you're right. And that is true. Like God, and that's why like there's not a lot of, God will not intervene either too, a lot of times, because you have free will. Like humans have free will. So people think like, why does God let these bad things happen? Or like, why is this? Well, there's free will. Like, like the beauty of being a human is you have free will, and the angels have free will. That's why a third of them went to hell, because they were like, no, I'm smarter than. And so we can go down those rabbit holes too of why that's even worse. Because angels know who they are. Humans don't know who we are. So God has mercy on us because we don't know who we are. Man search for meaning, all this stuff. We don't know the full story. And so that's where it's like you have to have empathy for yourself too and give yourself grace, because we don't know the full story. But it's that search for truth. It's that search for your agency. It's that search for your free will, the calling, the intuition, going back to what's my intuition, the 6 higher faculties, like we said with Bob. What is the gut? What's my gut telling me? What's my conscience telling me? Which direction do I need to go? Is this dead end job the right way I should be going right now? I hate my life. I'm arguing with my family. I'm arguing with my wife, my spouse, arguing with my kids because I'm doing this dumb thing. Well, maybe my heart's telling me, my instinct, my intuition is telling me to go another way, and I keep ignoring it, right? So there's a million ways you can kind of go with that, right? And you can kind of see these sprouting up in all of our lives in different ways. But it's just going against that truth, going against the intuition, going against the, like you said, we are going back to the center of the universe. We're not the center of the universe, but we are at the same time in the sense that God is in all of us, right? Truth is in all of us. Infinite intelligence is in all of us. But so much of it is this paradigm we don't understand, we don't believe, we have fear, and fear is that lack of faith. It's the opposite of having faith and just understanding and flowing, being in a flow state, being in the zone, right? Like all these things are like being in lockstep with God or being in lockstep with truth. So anyway, like it is this full circle thing that of course, we don't learn it in school. We don't, from our families, we don't learn it in government schools. We're not learning it on media or pop culture, right? Like they don't want you to know that. The demons of the earth, they want you decepted, chaos, distracted, sedated. That's how evil wins. Going back to the third of the angels that fell, like they love that. I mean, go watch Father Rippinger, the exorcist, the priest that was on Sean Ryan's show. 4 hours of waking you up from whatever coma that you're in is probably one of the greatest podcasts I've ever listened to in my life, from a couple of weeks ago. And if you don't understand the spiritual warfare and the mindset, the mind warfare that's going on in life around you, then you're at a massive disadvantage, massive disadvantage as to what's actually going on and why things are going on.
And that's, I think, the biggest problem with society these days. And we've talked about people just not getting punched in the face anymore, but like that's kind of how I see it, is like people just they always want to blame other people for their own life. That's just people's first reaction in life, is just to blame somebody, blame their spouse or blame their boss or blame their coworker, blame the government for it. They elected the wrong politician. But it's just that that's the world that we've kind of grown up in, and obviously it was by design because they want to feel like they have that control over people. Because the whole thing itself is a complete illusion. It's all abstract, and it seems like that's coming to surface now finally after I really don't know how they got away with this for 100 and some years. They fooled me for the first 30 some years of my
Mm-hmm.
life, and it's just like they were pretty effective with it. But I think that that's what Bitcoin really does more than anything else is it gives people agency again. It gives people sovereignty, and it allows you to, because I feel like if I didn't have Bitcoin in self custody right now, I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about the things we're talking about. I wouldn't feel comfortable having a YouTube channel because
Yeah.
that's the world that I see coming here for that path. The people who choose that is you got to be careful, because if you're not, they're going to close your bank account, and then you're not going to be able to feed your family, and then you're going to be in jail, and then it's this and that. But having Bitcoin allows you to take full agency and confidence and courage to speak the truth, because even if they come after you, they can't get your wealth. And that's a huge thing. And we talk about the intrinsic values of Bitcoin and how it's so misunderstood, but just the fact alone that you can take wealth and put it somewhere where nobody can take it from you, that's a massive unlock, I think, on the way to uncovering truth and shining light on the darkness that's been able to, sneak through the cracks for the last 100 years here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's when you choose, and this is like part of it too. We go back to, is it one person? Because again, a lot of people that question the government, question the mainstream narratives or legacy system, it's a lot of like, well, okay, there's one person controlling it all and this and that, whatever. And it's like, well, when you choose, to go back to another biblical reference, it's just Adam and Eve, right? What happened when Adam and Eve bit into the apple of, a tree of, of knowledge and of good and evil? Now they know the difference, right? They only knew good, but now they know good and evil. So now everything after that, now you know sin. So now you know and what sin is obviously just going away from truth. It's just moving away from truth ever so slightly. There's big ones, little ones, grave ones, right? But it's like the further you go away from truth. And so what that is in our modern day, for what we're talking about, is drinking from the chalice of easy money. You bit the apple from the easy money tree. And so now you know all the sin after that, because people, like in Bitcoiners, we do this too, like where it's like, there's one guy, it's Klaus Schwab or this and that, right? And I'm guilty of this over time and making it too simplistic, where it's not that. There's no coordination that's needed really between all these people or between 10 families or the banking cartel. There's not, because it's just fiat. So now all the sin comes thereafter, and there's no coordination needed. It's just malincentive that stacks on top of each other over time, making dumb decisions. And so it's very insidious because the deception is level 100, and it's very hard to see for the average person, because we want to just go to one person, like it's that person's fault and we got the answer, like there it is. And it's like, well, no, it's not. It's just a trillion different decisions off of billions of people over, like you said, 100 years of this deception being played, right? So it's you can't have good fruit from a bad tree. It's impossible. You can't have good society from dishonest money. And so we want to fight it. We want to vote a new Titanic captain after we hit the iceberg. Like you can't. Like you can't. That's impossible. Like you're still going to be 12,000 feet under the sea, guys. It does not matter. You have to remove yourself, get off the life raft, and choose the honest system. And then you have the chance at honest society. Not guaranteed even, but at least you have the chance. In this system, I know what's going down. I know it's failed. So when do I make that decision? When do I jump? Is it when the ship's at 45-degree angle and breaking in half? Is it when I'm only 10 feet from the water? Is it right away when it just starts listing? And that's what early adopters of Bitcoiners are. We're just people that like, hey, we put down the newspaper clipping of it can't sink, the US dollar can't go down, and we see the ship kind of rocking a little bit, and we're like, oh, that kind of seems odd. And then we're just like, yeah, we're looking for life rafts. And that's just us right now. We're still early.
Yeah. And I think that's even a lot of Bitcoiners suffer from that still, is that they're still thinking that one person's good or bad, and this side of the aisle's good, and this is, or there's neither side's good. I think that's probably the
I'm guilty of that too.
Problem in Bitcoin, right? Is like nobody's good out there. We can't trust anybody with anything. And it's like, I don't know. Like I've seen enough people in my life that I feel like most people are actually pretty good deep down. And there's good people within every agency and every entity and every company, every government, even the worst governments in the world. There's probably good people within those governments. And so now we have this cool thing called Bitcoin, where we do have the privacy aspect of it, where you can hold your own private keys that nobody can take from you, confiscate if you protect them properly. But then you have the public nature of it as well, which holds the people who are supposed to be serving us accountable. The transparency there, I don't think we could have a system without that transparency for the people. If you believe in having a centralized kind of entity to make decisions and allocate resources, then that's one thing, but they have to have transparency there. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've lacked in the last 100 years, is that we have this money that we measure everything by, this ruler essentially, but we have no idea if the ruler's right or not. And so how are you supposed to have a functioning society if you have no idea if that ruler is correct? Because the people who make the ruler, they haven't ever been audited and to say, is this ruler actually correct? The way we measure the entire world is based on a broken ruler. And so you have now the ability to protect it, the private keys from them, but also a system and a ruler that is very transparent, that anybody can audit with an internet connection. And you can run your own node, and you can say, we don't need to hire a third party to audit this. This system audits itself every 10 minutes. It self-regulates itself, and everybody can see it. So I think that we're going there. It's just between now and then is going to be a pretty rocky road for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I love that you said the ruler, because it's, is society at writ large going to change overnight? No, well, I mean, I don't think so. Theoretically, it could, right? You could lose currency, lose confidence in a currency, or have hyperinflation overnight, in essence. But will it probably happen tomorrow? No. So what can you do, right? That you can put yourself on that ruler, on that unchanging ruler. Like if you actually want to measure your monetary standard, your monetary wealth, whatever, you can do that yourself now, with Bitcoin going forward. Put your family on that. You can work, which is the only thing we can control at the end of life. I mean, and again, like you said, Bitcoiners were guilty of this. Politics, everyone's guilty of this, of like looking across what's right in front of you, your family, your kids, the things you can control right in your life now. And we're worried about people on the other side of the world. And it's like, well, if everyone just was paying attention to what they could control right in front of them, we wouldn't have a lot of these problems. They would go away. They would cease to exist. So, and it makes me think of Scott Adams too, the late great Scott Adams, who always said, people think it's good versus evil, but it really, in there's nuance to this, because we just talked about good and evil and spirits, whatever, but everyone thinks it's good, right? Because we talked about the incentives of the system, but it's good versus good. He's like, it's not good versus evil, and it's not evil, whatever. It's good versus good. Like both sides.
Yeah, because nobody thinks they're evil.
Yeah, no one thinks they're evil, right? And it's the incentives of the system that lead you down certain paths. And maybe you're doing dumb things or evil things, but most people don't know that. They don't even understand. They know so much that isn't so. It's just the incentive of the system led them down such and such path. So it's just a system of incentives. The architecture of the system leads you to do those things, and you just rationalize it. You think like, well, I'm going the right way. Like we're doing the right thing. Like this is for. So that to me is the big problem. And the ruler, like you said, it's, Greg Voss always used to say this, another great Canadian, would just say like it's 11th grade math. But I always would be like, Greg, it's 7th grade science, right? Like this is, we don't want to control, or we want to control in the experiment, and we don't need more than one variable. And that's what fiat is. It's trying to do these experiments with all kinds of variables moving, the goalposts are moving, and interest rates, and the amount of currency, the denominator, all these different wild things. When like you said, if you're building a house, you need your 12-inch, 30-centimeter ruler, whatever it is. Like it can't be changing. You can't have this thing that's changing all the time. And that's where society has to reorient themselves to that standard. And we're going through it. There's no one was in Bitcoin 17 years ago. Now there's, whatever, millions of people around the world that are, and that will just keep, growing. And the last thing I'll say about it is like, I forget what you were saying, but it made me think of the gold-backed token that Peter Schiff was just talking about, right? This just goes to like a lack of understanding, and he's a very smart man. Peter Schiff is, he's very smart in the legacy system. He might not understand the answers to the system, but he's brilliant when it comes to the old system and how it works and what's happening. And so, like you have a gold-backed token, that's just the dollar. And we might have talked about this in the past week on one of the other shows, but that's the dollar. You're recreating. That's what dollars are. It's a credit system based off the back of gold and silver. So just be recreating that system, and that's where, like, if no one's read the article by Gigi, Bitcoin is Time, from 5-6 years ago, it's phenomenal, and it goes through it. It's a good, decently long article, but he goes through. There's two types of money in the world, and there's many other things he talks about, but there's physical tokens and there's a ledger. And so
Yeah.
physical tokens, right? Like it's great for like Joe and I maybe, or like we live next to his door to each other and we're like trading something. Like, okay, like we know who has the gold and silver. But when
Yeah,
you
you
have a
can see the
global,
exchange happen,
you can
right?
see the
You can
exchange
feel it.
happen.
Yeah.
Yes. And it only matters between like you and I, or maybe like our families or people that live right, maybe in our subdivision or our community or whatever. But when you have a global economy, which again, if we decide not to have a global economy for some reason, then okay, we can have a different story, but or different talk. But clearly, like we're going this direction, we're gonna have a global economy. We already have that, and so we
Yeah.
need a ledger that is uncorruptible, incorruptible. It's the only answer you can have, and the only answer we have seen so far is Bitcoin. And so that to me is again, that's all the signal you need to really understand what's happening. But it's a great article. Everyone should go read it because it's a classic. It's an all timer, and it really clearly explains things that you can very quickly then see who understands the system we're in, where we're going, and the answers to that system. If you read that article, it's a laser that cuts through all the noise of the people like Peter Schiff. God love him, a very smart man in the old system, but a lot of people that don't see where the puck is going. To use another hockey analogy, right? Like Bitcoiners can just see, like you dumping the puck in or at the red line, it's coming up around the boards to the other side. Like I just got to get to the far blue line, and that's where Bitcoiners can see the puck going, and just not everyone can see that yet.
Yeah, and I think that the thing with the tokenized gold, the main issue with it is that we tried it before. We had that's what money was for a very long time, and it failed, right? Like it's pretty
Literally.
clear that it didn't work. And so even when you look back to like the 1920s when Henry Ford talked about an energy currency, the reason why he wanted an energy currency is because he didn't trust the gold. He didn't trust the people holding the gold. That was his whole thing. He's like, we're still going to have to rely on trusting these people, which I don't know about you. Even back in the 1920s, Henry Ford knew enough to say, hey, we probably shouldn't put our everything in the hands of a couple people.
Right.
So that was the energy currency and why gold failed with that. And I think that when we're thinking about it now, that's my theory is that Trump is a lot of things. I think he's a pretty intelligent guy. I don't think he's the one calling the shots. I think he's just kind of the guy put in charge of causing chaos and waking people up. But I think he's a smart guy, and I don't think the U.S. is going to have a currency that's backed by gold because of that. Because if you think
Yeah.
about who owns all the gold, it's mostly owned by central banks. It's mostly owned by the Chinas of the world and the Russias and the Indias.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the US was to create a new currency that's backed by gold, he's basically just playing into their hands. That's the stupidest thing they could do, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's a pretty good chance that those countries and central banks all have more gold than the US. And so therefore their currency would actually be stronger. Their economy would be stronger. The way the world perceives them would be stronger in a gold-backed economy. So that's why I think that all roads here, whether it's the Jason Lowery software, what was the book
Mm-hmm.
that they just put out a couple weeks ago? Was it Cyber Strategy or something?
Yeah, it was just like their cyber strategy or whatever report, or I don't know if report, but that was just the cyber strategy, and it was in large part. I don't think I got to read it. I don't know what it was. I don't know what I saw, but the couple people that I saw. So I haven't verified myself what the actual strategy said, but a couple, some people that I trusted that were talking about it just said, hey, this looks eerily similar to Jason Lowery software. And then someone had said, hey, it looks like a software with a different cover on it. And then Jason Lowery himself had retweeted it out and just said, it just retweeted all that and just said, like, who would have seen that coming or something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's just, he has sent a lot of cryptic tweets the last, year or whatever. And I do think a lot of people are going to come back and look, a decade or two from now, I'm like, oh man, I was like trying to kind of tell us what was going on behind the scenes without saying it. And because
I think so I didn't read it either, Brandon, because I'm not a guy who, if there's a 20-page document, I'm not going to be the first in line to read that thing. But I did get AI to summarize it for me. So maybe I'll ask quickly, like do a comparison between what would I call that? The 2026 cyber strategy document.
Yeah.
Okay. In the meantime here, Sats and Sunsets gave you some memberships on your YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if you can see that or not.
Love it. Thank you guys. Appreciate that. I'll check it out. Let's see. You guys are awesome.
Can you summarize the comparison between it's just software Jason Lowery? What's that guy's story?
Right here.
He was in you got the hard copy. Hard copy.
This one's a soft cover. I don't know. There might be. I heard there was a hardcover actually version, but I have I got 2 versions of it. I got the one like 4 years ago when it came out, and then I just got another one in the last like 6 months. It costs like
Where'd you get it?
$50 now, or $100, $50. I got it on Amazon, I think somewhere. I don't know if it's a resale though, or I think it might have a resale version I had to get, but I wanted to get another version so I could mark it up and write in it,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And then, but yeah, I mean, if no one's read that, I mean, you gotta, I mean, at the very least, watch some of the stuff he did like 3 or 4 years ago on Breedlove's podcast or stuff like that, because it's, people say it's a hard read. I don't think it's actually that hard of a read. I think people just look at it really quick and they're like, oh shoot, there's like some chemistry looking problems and things like that, where it kind of, but it's actually not that complicated. And it's actually, I think, pretty readable. And boy, does he really explain exactly what's going on right now. Like even like, just the height of like kinetic warfare. Like we're reaching this, equilibrium, or like this, diminishing returns, where you have like nuclear war, like nuclear stalemates, and now you add in like robots and what's happening.
Drones.
And you can just throw robots at each other, but like, okay, well, we can do this all day long. Like we're gonna see who can manufacture the most amount of robots in carnage, just like a pile of steel laying in there, and like whoever has the last robot wins, and that's arbitrarily like, no, like at some point and so his whole point is like it reverses back to like cyberspace, or it goes to this new realm, and you start fighting over hash power and cyberspace. Energy is the war, because okay, is it nuclear destruction, like mutually assured destruction? And then like, again, the robot thing doesn't make sense really either. We're in this transition period. So of course there's drones and robots and things are happening. But at some point it just becomes like, okay, this is dumb. Like we're not inflicting real damage on the other person necessarily. So it's like, what are we doing here? And then one of the other things, and he talks about like the bit power, some of the stuff like that, talks about Bitcoin being an offensive, or like a weapon, which people had a really big problem with. And then the other thing was abstract power versus real power, which again, like you said, Trump is really showing everyone.
That's what we're seeing play out right now.
That's what we're seeing play out. Like you can take your international law, crumple it up, and the Constitution, anything, and say, hey, if no one's going to challenge me on this and you're not going to stand up to me, that's just abstract. That doesn't exist. But the JDAM above your head, or the rack on that elk, those are real things. You can believe in that or not, but that still it'll kill you, whether you believe in it or not. But then the abstractness of like giving a man authority over me, well, that's abstract, like that's, so you start learning those different, in like how the world's playing out right now. And it's a phenomenal book that people, I wish everyone could read. So,
I mean, could you imagine how different the world would look today if we had been taught this kind of a theory when we were kids? But we were basically, what we had was 15 or 16 years of programming to lead us to believe that abstract power is real power.
It is real power. Yeah.
That's the whole game, right? Like that's literally what they've been doing. That's the whole education system itself. To say, hey, if you step out of line here, you're going to jail. Or if you step out of line, if you do this when you shouldn't, this is what's going to happen to you, because this person signed this law at this time, And you're right. Even the Constitution, as much as we all love it, you can see in the last 10 or 20 years how much that's just absolutely been stomped on and made. And so people believe in it, and that's the values that they hold. But it's also like how much power does it actually carry? And the Constitution, to me, really goes back to people having full agency and full choice and volunteering into what they do, so long as they don't harm other people around them.
Yep. That's it. And that's the lesson everyone's starting to learn right now. Because you go back to, again, I've said this before, like I was very political in the 2000s as a child. I was 12, 13 in the 2000 election, the hanging Chads, Bush versus Gore election. And that's my first memories of really like arguing with people or debating people at 13 years old about politics. Really? Oh yeah. And, so yeah, you see like this world where it's like, and really ever since then, it's like, how come it's like every debate or every election is just like 50-50? It's like, it's within the margin of error all the time. Like I can go around all over the country.
Yeah, no doubt.
And it's not really like what's happening, like a lot of so it's like, there's so much, and I believe they just keep it within the margin of error. So like there's an acceptable level of cheating going on. And this is both sides, right? And it's manufactured, like you said earlier, it's from the top. There's other, entities controlling the system in essence. So it's how can we make it so it seems plausible? They give you the polls and like, like all this stuff just to manufacture consent, like social engineer, which you've talked about a lot over time, right? Socially engineering people into where they want them to go. You talked about this earlier in the show even, right? Like it's got all of us for a long time. And so when you see this playing out, you have like, 9% approval ratings for Congress for decades on end. Yet the same people constantly get elected over and over again. I mean, it's like all these things, like none of it makes sense. None of it adds up. And that's the end of this line that people are starting to realize and wake up to, that, oh, like this doesn't make any sense. That abstract power versus real power, like all these things are starting to come into purview. I've even seen some legacy people, Glenn Beck the other day, who, has been in the legacy world, media world for 20, 25 years, 30 years. And he was using trust, but verify, or don't trust, verify.
Yeah.
So the level set upgrade on people's, nature is coming. Even in the legacy world, people are starting to realize, I can't trust any of this stuff. I've just been like willfully, ignorant and just like trusting everything that's going on. So now you're having to start seeing this permeate through society at different levels. And he has a huge audience. And so now you have a bunch of people that are starting to hear these words of don't trust, verify, audit. Scott Adams talking a lot about auditing, the word of the year going forward. Those are great words if you're a Bitcoiner. Like people coming to our camp realizing audit, don't trust, verify, all the memes that we've been saying for 17 years. So it's very hopeful for what's going forward, because, do you need pain to wake people up? Yeah, you do. You need wars, dumb things happening, people not doing, constitutional things. And that has to happen before people wake up. But we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah. And that's, we got the cyber strategy here, which is, it's actually not that long. It's only 6 pages long. So thanks, Cindy shared it over on Nostr, and looks like on Rumble too.
Thank you.
But yeah, you can check this out. I'm going to share both here. So I'm going to share the cyber strategy here. You can see Trump's nice signature there. But let's take a look at this quickly. This is Perplexity's version of it. So it says, here's a short version. Lowry's software thesis and the Trump administration's 2026 cyber strategy treats cyberspace as a domain where cost imposition is central to defense, but they differ sharply on what creates that cost and how policy should be built. So they overlap, it looks like, is both frameworks reject passive cyber defense. And it was Trump who brought in this Space Force in 2019, and everybody kind of just laughed at him. And I feel like there's been a couple things happen in the first term and the second term where he does these things, and people just kind of write it off as like, oh, that's just Trump being Trump, or that, like I think that's, looking back in 50 years from now, Space Force will be a massive thing, revolutionary thing that really changed history from that point on. And most people just kind of write it off as a joke that Trump's wants to send these people into space and fight these wars in space. But that's really not what it is. And I think that Lowry did a pretty good job of because he was in Space Force, right? Yes. Yeah.
I believe he was in the Air Force, and then he went to the Space Force. I think he's in Space Force now, I'm pretty sure. So yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you could, it says, if you want one sentence, Lowry says security comes from embedding physical cost into digital control via Bitcoin style proof of work. And the Trump strategy says security comes from a coordinated national cyber posture that uses many tools, including but not centered on Bitcoin, which makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. You have to say that. Like that was the yeah.
Exactly. And it's the same kind of thing as like, people are like, well, why would Trump back the currency by Bitcoin? Because Trump wants America to succeed. Like, I think if there's one thing that everybody would agree on is like Trump wants America to succeed.
Yep. And he's been saying it for 50 straight years. We have proof of work of him saying that for 50 straight years, in essence, saying the same stuff. So,
and that's what people miss. They think that he just kind of came out of nowhere and was like, oh, I want to put my signature on everything and send people into space to fight each other. It's like, no, there's a reason why all this kind of stuff is happening. And there's a direct correlation with Bitcoin and proof of work and the Space Force.
Yeah, 100%. It's wild because like the Iran war obviously has divided a lot of people again, if Trump wasn't polarizing enough, but it goes back to this soft war theory, and people really have to understand that. Obviously most people don't, but 2 things can be true, 10 things can be true, 100 things can be true. And I think that's where it's like, is Israel playing Trump? Yeah, probably. Is Trump playing Israel? Yeah, probably. Is Trump doing backroom deals with China and Russia right now? Yeah, probably. Like, but people, again, government run school doesn't allow people, it only is one answer. Like the Scantron test tells you it's true or false. Exactly, that's not how life works. Like, it's anything but how life works. So people are like, their minds are breaking because they don't realize like all these guys are playing each other. Like they're all doing things to get what they want. I mean, I think there is a loser in this. I think Europe is probably one of the biggest losers in all of this. Just with their own mistakes of just the green energies, which we've already talked about in a different sense, but like they're hemorrhaging because of their own dumb policies. And I do believe the Tom Luongo thesis in large part of Trump breaking the back of the city of London. We had SOFR and LIBOR changing over the last 10 years. A lot has been done to rip the system away from the city of London and the banking cartels. And I think we're just seeing that. And I think the Bitcoin thesis plays into that. And so whether Trump's playing 4D chess or not, I mean, who knows? I have no idea. But it's seemingly, the stablecoin stuff, whether we like it or not, the Genius Act, Clarity Act, Trump loves America. He said that for years. He said stuff about Iran for years. I hate war just as much as the next person. I don't want it to happen. I would like them to follow the Constitution. That would be my ideal thing. That's my ethos. But a soft war is the thesis. I mean, abstract power versus real power. Reality. Exactly. And I'm not in the Situation Room. No one is. We don't have all the information. And so I can want one thing, but I also can acknowledge that the 100 things can be true, and I'm not privy to a lot of these things. And so that's the thing that I think everyone's really we're all dealing with it. We're all trying to decipher what's going on. But I do think the Bitcoiner lens of follow the money analysis, which another Canadian, Nolan Bowerley, always talks about for forever. Follow the money analysis is going to get you much closer to the truth than trusting the experts or following the science or anything like that, right? Because the money, the incentives are controlling all the decisions being made. So it's why, at the end of the day, the dollar network has to be, they're fake currencies. The government spins up out of nowhere. So there has to be hot air, fiat by decree. There has to be political currency, political backing to it. All aircraft carriers, like all these things to force other countries to use that network, that dollar. Because why would someone use a fake currency? They wouldn't. Like, I'm not going to use Chuck E. Cheese tokens, or I'm not going to go to Tim Hortons and roll up the rim to win and use their little the stick on the side of the cup as currency. But if the government's forcing me at the end of a barrel of a gun to use it, then well, guess what? Now I'm using it. And this is why they're tracking $600, and every time you go to the bank, they're like, oh, what are you doing with it? And crossing borders, and then America is going and taking out the leaders of countries, Gaddafi in Libya and Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and like what's going on in Iran, because this is the game. If you have these players leave the network, your network becomes powerless. You don't have value to it. And so this is why, they're doing things to the people inside the country over here, and then they're doing things to people outside the country because they have to give the network value. Or Bitcoin's opposite. The energy that is mined and contained is the security. It is the value of the network. And so as I don't know who is Max, like the trade is the settlement in Bitcoin. Like the trade is the settlement. Like when the every 10 minutes, like that is the energy, that is the security of the system. We don't need some arbitrary, the fiat, decree going on by government somewhere. So it's a wild time. It's a wild time. And I think humans were going through this phase transition, and people are having a very hard time with it. Cause like you said, Jor, all this government run schooling, all this stuff, people, they just don't, it's these worlds clashing in their head. And it's just like people's minds exploding everywhere. And there's just a lot of cleanup of the mess coming. So
yeah, and that's what it is. And I see a couple comments about the voting and stuff, and that's my biggest thing is like I'm not naive enough to think that Bitcoiners can just say, okay, we're going to start using Bitcoin and everything's going to change there, because I do think that if there was enough resistance with that, something would happen, whether they basically threw every Bitcoiner in jail, because there's really not that many of us at this stage, or anybody who's ever used Bitcoin. Jail is like the Parks and Rec. Send a Bitcoin transaction to jail. But
so classic.
So here's my kind of theory on it is like I don't think the voting matters. That's my big thing. I think that there's been two kind of systems at war for a very long time, and it's not even systems, it's bloodlines almost. Right. And like the one bloodline has succeeded for many years now, dating back to like the 1913, because up until that point, there was actually quite a bit of pushback to that Federal Reserve central banking system.
Right.
And there was a big ship that went down that
City of London,
the major players in that. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
But so that's been happening for 100 years. And so whether you voted for blue or red, it really didn't matter, because the bloodline that was running things at the top, they did have the real power in that way. They did have the militaries. They did have all this kind of stuff, where if you went against that, it didn't matter who you voted for. And so they just kind of kept the facade of like, oh, this year it's red, this year it's blue, and kind of flip back and forth. But I do really think that at some point, mainly around 2050, and that whole thing kind of took a detour. And there had been the other side, the aisle there, who had been watching this side, watching their moves, because they publish all their moves too. They literally tell people what they're going to do. They're like, there's Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050. So when you have the plan of what your enemy is going to do, it's not too hard to like put some counter things in place. And so Yes, it matters who's making the decisions. Yes, it matters because they have the real power. I think even when the Democrats had the presidency for 4 years there, I think the other side actually had the real power there, which is, call it the military, call it whatever you want to. So that's why I don't think the voting matters that much. And I think the more, if you vote, you're almost saying, yes, I support that system. But I do think that there's two forces at work here, and it's not good and evil. I mean, that is definitely dictating factor of it, but I would say bloodlines, and I would say that the bloodlines kind of changed in the last 10 years here, and we're seeing more of like a tech capitalist, tech utopia kind of thing versus the fiat centralized banking system that has run for the I don't know how many years now. So it's interesting, and I think that neither system. I don't think that people could really be free truly without Bitcoin, because it would always be something would happen, and people would never have that real power. Because again, yeah, you could say whatever you want, you could do whatever you want, you can make as much money as you want to. But if they at the top wanted you to fail, they could just stomp you out. They could take your bank account, they could pull your mortgage, they could whatever get you fired. But with Bitcoin, you could actually cross borders now with all the wealth that you have, and you could get that however you want to, but you can cross borders and go wherever you want to freely with 12 words in your head. And that without that, I just don't see how the world a positive future is possible without the ability to do that.
You can. I mean, again, this is, I think, of the fourth or fifth Canadian I brought up in the show, Jeff Booth, right? You can't fix reality from the current system. You,
Exactly.
you can't do it, right? I mean, the system's too far gone. Like you can't. You can take the documents, like you can take the Constitution, you can take some of these with you into the new land, whatever. But like the system as it stands is not going to exist going forward. Like the age, like I was talking this morning to the guys. I mean, the Bitcoin Way guys, right? The Department of Homeland Security has been in the news a lot because of the TSA stuff going on with the flights in America and everything. The Department of Homeland Security was created in 2001 or 2002 after the events there, which I won't mention. So there's not some like little explainer on your video or whatever. But there's 240,000 agents as of like a year or two ago, a couple of years ago, I think. So it's probably way more now. But there's 20,000 people a year added to DHS. Are you 240,000 times safer than you were in 25 years ago? I mean, it's insane to even think about. 20,000 people a year in DHS. I mean, what are they doing exactly? I mean, that's just the kind of grift, and all these different things that go on are just grifting and money laundering programs to obfuscate truth, lack of transparency.
Yes.
I mean, look at the guy, Jonathan Gruber, who is an MIT professor now and was a guy that came out 15 years ago and was just laughing at conferences saying, we passed socialized medicine or, Obamacare, Affordable Care Act here in America. And like, just called the stupidity of the American voter. Like we knew it was better for them. Like we knew we had to get it passed, and lack of transparency is a great political tool. Like, so like laughing. I mean, there's multiple videos of him saying this and just out brazenly out there. The guy's an MIT professor still to this day. I mean, that's the kind of people that just, they hate you. Like these people literally hate you. They hate your freedom. They think they know more than you, and they have to run your life. And that's what we're dealing with at the end of the day. And so, again, you go back to like Republicans, the opposite side of those people, they've had majority. They ran them like, we're going to take down Obamacare. We're going to do this. What'd they do? They have majorities multiple times in the last 15 years. They've done nothing. Like they stripped one or two amendments out, I think, or stuff like that. But like Trump's had a majority, like nothing happens. Like very little happens actually. And to your point of like, it's both sides. Like they capture both sides and they, follow the money. Who's getting paid? Who's the donor class paying off these people? Why they go to power, have $100 to their name, and now they're worth $30 million. It's because they're having, fun with the donor class, the lobbying class. Follow the money, and it'll show you the where the world is going at the end of the day. So yeah, and the other thing I was thinking of, like you said, tragedy and hope. Some of these the great books over time that show you the system. It's hiding in plain sight. Going back to the intelligence agencies, they hide things in plain sight all the time. Evil uses deception, chaos, all this, but humans cannot be. Humans have to willfully accept their demise, in essence. You cannot be forced or like coerced into your own deception or deceit or anything like that. So that is one thing that people should be aware of. Like these things hide in plain sight. To what you said, like they put the books out, they put the literature out, Agenda 21, the reports. Klaus Schwab's writing the Great Reset literally 3 months after it starts, and all of a sudden it's published. I mean, the Patriot Act was written decades before, and all. So these things have been, and they'll show you these things. These things are out there. They have to show you. It's part of the game, and humans willfully just like, okay, sign on the dotted line and sign their life away. And it's just not going to happen going forward, because the 40, 45 and under crowd has had enough, and the lack of transparency, it's going away. Audit, like we said, trust, but verify, or don't trust, verify. That's all coming back into purview. It's just fourth turning, the cliches, whatever we want to use, but it's true. And people are waking up and they're sick of it. They had enough.
Yeah. And even like, so again, Trump to me is kind of just a figurehead in the whole thing. Some people think he's playing 4 or 5D chess. Some people think he's the biggest dummy on the planet. Yeah. It's probably somewhere in between there. But if you think about like, who could be playing 5D chess right now? Who could be playing 4D chess? It's probably the guys behind Trump. Again, I don't think Trump's waking up in the morning deciding who he's going to take a phone call with today, or what he's going to say on, CNBC today. There is something much bigger behind Trump that's playing out, and I think, and really to me, I think that they understand the sense that there's no way to fix that system, that the Londons and the central bankers and that whole fiat system, there's no possible way for them to fix that system. But they also don't want to just go into total chaos tomorrow, right? Like they can't do that either. They have to find some balance there where, like, I believe is Bitcoin in the whole thing. I think that's what Bitcoin's main thing is, to like a smoother transition that would otherwise be possible from that system of theft and evil and fiat into this new world. But it just doesn't happen overnight. You can't flip a switch and say, okay, we're going from this system to the next. And so I do think that whether it was the Henry Fords, the JFKs, the Nikola Teslas, the Elons, even Elon tweeted about Bitcoin today, which is kind of random.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
In this whole, but those guys all kind of see the world the same way. They know that there's more out there than what, we're told. And they've been pretty open with that too throughout the years. And so I think that that's the transition happening right now. I don't think Trump's going to try to save anybody. And I think the people who are waiting to be saved by a political party are going to be in a lot of trouble, for one. But I do think that Trump has the intention of waking people up and trying to give people their agency back, and realize that he's basically showing people, this is what's going on in the system here that you guys have been living in for the last 100 years. This is how bad it is. Are you going to sit there and take it, or are you going to do something about it? Here's some tools if you want to go do something about it. Bitcoin, whatever it may be, but it's yours. You have the ability to do that now, and we're not going to stop you from doing it. We're not going to just give you the world in your hands, but we're just going to make this transition here as smooth as possible. That's kind of how I see it playing out.
Yeah, I agree too. And, obviously with being a president for only a few years or whatever, it does seem like a lot of what he's doing is just, chaos theory, trying to break apart a lot of these things. And
that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, just break strangleholds. And again, Cole Dick just mentioned Tom Luongo. I know we brought him up earlier. I do believe there's a lot of that at play. That Tom is probably one of the closest to being over the target, like trying to break a lot of what's happening. Because again, you just go back to Trump's words for 40, 50 years, saying the same things about Iran, about China, all these different things. He's been saying the same things. So we have to at least, I don't know, not give him credit, but like believe him, because he's been the one consistent voice out there saying that over and over again and not waffling on it. And so that's what it seems like, is just trying to break that. Because we were talking about this earlier. The city of London has been fighting with the Americas for 250 years, 300 years. This is not a new thing. The central banks were part of that. The War of 1812. I mean, we fought multiple wars, which people forget about over with America. And the central bank is the third central bank earlier, which you kind of touched on loosely. And so this is not a new thing. This is like the last vestiges of that. Like you said, the bloodlines are changing. So they're not going to go out without a fight. Like there's going to be a lot of chaos. I think that's what Bitcoiners have to be ready for too. Like it sucks that we have to live through parts of this history where it's like, it might not be super fun. It might not be, but history is rife with things not being super fun. Like that's just what happens in a fallen world. We've had it very good for a long time. We're all conditioned, and I say this myself included, right? We're all very comfortable in our lifestyles in the West, in America and Canada and stuff like that. And it's, I'm generally speaking, but it's like we have things so easy. You can flip on a sports game if you want, whatever. No one wants to get off the couch. No one wants to be, thrown on the street or whatever, right? No one wants that. But who knows what's going forward? We're going to look back and going back to, you said something earlier and made me think of this too. like 100 years from now, I think people will look back and look at this as a modern dark age. Like you said,
Yeah.
Edison, Tesla, these guys talked about energy money. Like these are known things, like that these are problems we have to, and what's been invented. And again, I think we did talk about this recently too. What's been invented in the last
Yeah.
100 years? Not that much. Like when you actually look at things, it's been a lot of new mousetraps, better mousetraps, iterations on things we invented 100 years ago, 150 years ago. And so like, where's the Jetsons, right? And so it blows the mind, but it's because of fiat. It's just been a bunch of war, a bunch of, killing tens and tens of millions, really hundreds of millions of people through Marxism and global wars and things of that nature. And here we are, we're living through this modern dark age. We kill our own children. We euthanize ourselves. Like we sedate ourselves with drugs and bread and circus and the Coliseum and esports and video games and all. It's like people are going to look back 100 years from now and then we use fake, government currencies on top of it. People are like, what in the world are you people doing? I mean, it's just the amount of progress that was lost over the last 100 years. Like it's incalculable where we could be right now if we weren't using fiat this whole time. So I don't know, Jordan. It's wild.
Even, I mean, 100 years is a pretty big problem, I think, but you could go back further than that, right? And that's what I think a lot of people miss with Bitcoin is that it is this immutable ledger of not just money. Like Bitcoin's, again, like let's pretend we're going back to our hockey and golf analogy right off the top, which is like the skill set is like 5% of it, but then the mental side of things is like 95% of it. And that's how I see Bitcoin too. It's like Bitcoin is like 5% money or less and 95% everything else.
Yeah.
Because it is this ledger where you can put things on there that nobody can change ever again. And so just imagine if we had that, like even going back to the days of the, what's the big library? Alexandria, I think it was like a long, long time ago, where they were building pyramids and they were like asking the right questions and trying to figure out what's actually going on in the universe here. And all that information was burned down multiple times. I think they really wanted to get rid of that information. And I just can't even imagine where we would be as a society today if we had access to that information back then. And so the cool thing about Bitcoin to me is like we can put things on this ledger now and nobody can change it. Nobody can delete it. And I just think that going back, even thinking 100 years out, but look at 1,000 years out, if you can actually find a way now to put information that nobody can delete or burn down or get rid of, what that looks like for the future.
It's wild.
And it's just, I just think that Saylor said it before. He said everything, at some point we're going to consider everything before Bitcoin to be, or everything before Satoshi to be bullshit, which is funny because when you think about like before Satoshi BS, so that's bullshit, right? And because there's no way to actually verify that.
Yep. I mean, think about it's like, again, yeah, you're right. Saylor, a number of years ago said this, right? Like economics and MBA and, all these things, like it's a pseudoscience. You're learning Keynesianism, Marxism. Right. It's all a pseudoscience in order to justify printing of currency, which is just theft at the end of the day, stealing it's all this, the government school system, all these things are literally set up to justify the stealing of your time and energy. That's all it is at the end of the day. It's wild. I mean, you don't need just in time shipping, like all these things we set up, like this fake, like society we've built up around things. It's like, at the end of the day, what do you need to survive? Some food, some water, your family around you, whatever. And it's like, that's all you need. But we've created this system where you need to have this whole like circle now, this fake circle we created just to come back to my necessities of life. It's like the wildest thing. Like you don't actually need any of these things. So you have, and most people think food comes from a grocery store, that's how backwards we are. Where because of the fiat currency, it's put everyone on this hamster wheel. There's no time to actually think about the world you live in and think about your higher faculties, like we started talking about earlier in your mindset. We went to a fake school right when we were 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, the programming, nature versus nurture, like we started talking about, all to what? Get a fake job with fake timelines, fake goals, fake, deadlines, all these things to work for fake money to lead to this fake life of chasing things. And then you're taking fake drugs, synthetic, eating fake things. Like it's literally, and it's only possible by government printing currency. And the only answer is separating money from state. Like government money was here way before nation states, and it's gonna be here long after nation states. And people just, again, we're living this time where the frog is in the water, the fish is in the water. They don't know they're wet. They don't even understand because it's just like, well, it's all relative. It's mindset. It's their paradigm. They don't understand because they've just been living in it. They're like, well, what do you mean? Governments create currency. Like that's what they do. And then no one ever stops to think like, well, why? And what does that do? They just like take it as like inflation is just like natural. It's like, oh, that's just a natural thing. Like, okay, inflation and prices are going up. Okay, it's just it makes no sense. You even see Bitcoin. I mean, I've seen Bitcoiners do this. We're talking about like prices going up, or like something going on in supply chain is like inflation. Like you turn on CNBC, like interchanging inflation. It's like no, inflation is just solely the printing of currency. The fractional reserve system and governments and the banking system printing currency. That is it. Everything
Yeah,
else
they're
is
inflating like tariffs with it too, or they're putting
exactly.
tariffs in with
It's going to
inflation.
cause inflation. It's like no. It might cause prices rising,
Yeah.
logistics problems, or but those are all symptoms of printing of currency and inflation. And so like people, it's just like the bastardization of language and everything, right? Social Security, all these different things. Even liberal, modern liberal in America, that used to mean exactly opposite 100 years ago. Like liberal, classical liberal was someone who was basically conservative, and they were trying to conserve the ideals of the past, and they are open-minded generally. But then we like have these fracturing of terms and words, which goes back to the paradigms, the mindset. These psyops have been going on for 150 years, going back to the British Crown, the Royal Institute of
Yeah.
Affairs, all these different psyop agencies that were created by MI6 basically, and have perpetrated now the world. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But we are living in a massive psyop, massive psyop, and it's starting to unravel.
I don't think it could be any bigger, honestly. I don't think it could be
No,
a bigger psyop. Day
it
after
really
day.
couldn't. Literally.
Okay, well, Brandon, we've been chatting for 2 hours. Well, I've been on for 2 hours now. What
Feels like 10 minutes.
yeah, what's your schedule? Because you do a live stream on Monday, right?
Yeah, I usually do it at like 4 or 5 Eastern, maybe around 5 Eastern time, so
On your
later in the
YouTube
day.
channel.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we got our BTC mastermind on Tuesday with Brandon, myself, Rajat, Forrest, and Robin. So we got that going tomorrow. And then you also do one on Friday, right? On YouTube?
And I do YouTube on Friday. So I usually do 2 a week on my channel. Yep. Friday at 5 and even Monday at 5, somewhere around there usually. It always goes way longer than I should.
Yeah, me too, man.
Like this. Yeah. It's like
The one thing I was thinking before the show today, I was like, okay, I'm going to mention right off the hop to Brandon, because I know that him and I could probably spend 5 hours talking. We need to be somewhat conscious of time a little bit today. So we'll give ourselves a little bit of slack. But this is something that Brandon and I wanted to do kind of on a going forward basis every Monday morning to kind of set the tone for the week. There'll be a lot of different discussions. They'll obviously kind of be all through a Bitcoin lens, but talking about the different aspects of things and the Bob Proctors of the world and the Henry Fords and the evil and all this kind of stuff. The angels, who knows?
Yep.
Somebody in the chat said woo woo Monday. I don't know if we're going to call it that, but it's going to be a slightly different conversation than I think that anybody's having on Bitcoin in this area. Because again, Bitcoin as a money is just such a small component of it, but there's a whole other galaxy out there of things that we need to explore. And so that's what we want to start doing on bright and early Monday morning.
Yes.
So we'll have to think, Brandon, in terms of like any sort of structure or things we can do, segments and how to end the show, shit like that. But we figured we'd just show up today, first one. Let us know what you guys think in the live chat or in the comments after on Brandon's channel or my stuff. But should we call the day here? I kind of got to use the washroom here. I've had 2 coffees already this morning.
Yeah, no, for sure. I should regather myself as well. And yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll get a little bit better too in terms of like managing the chat. We want I love doing live streams because it's interactive. I think when I open up my Instagram or my YouTube and I see all this AI crap and it's either AI generated prompts or AI generated scripts, or it's like a fully AI guy talking. I don't want that. So what Brandon and I are going to do is we're going to show up here every Monday. We're going to have conversations, a couple topics. We want you guys and girls to be part of it as well. And I'll do a little bit better managing the chat next week as well.
Yep.
So any last thoughts, Brandon, before we wrap her up for the week?
No. I mean, have an amazing week. Be cautious, weary of the mind, the paradigm, and the gatekeeper. The paradigm is just the gatekeeper, right, of the thoughts of your mind, what you can or can't do. The poem. I don't know if I have it somewhere, but it just thinking. I try to read my kids all the time, and I had it. The Detroit Red Wings had it in their locker room as a kid, and then my coach, when I was playing for Little Caesars, gave it to us when I was like 10 years old, and it was called Thinking. And the genesis of it, it's a handful of stanzas, but basically it's if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. And at the end of the day, life's battles don't always go to the bigger or stronger man, but it's the man who thinks he can. And that at the end of the day is just, you see it so much in Bitcoin, people just waiting around for government. I mean, I'm speaking to Bitcoiners. It's not even the pre-coiners. The pre-coiners are just off on another reservation.
Yeah,
but a lot of
agreed.
Bitcoiners just waiting around and waiting for permission, waiting for the government tax exemptions, waiting for this, waiting for that. What are we waiting for? Freedom's not given. It's not granted. It's taken. And that's the revolution. What we kind of inferred to earlier. I just don't think most Bitcoiners are even ready for the fight that we're in now and the fight that's coming. This is real life. This is real power versus abstract power, and we're in the thick of it.
Yeah, that's such a great point there. I think it was Henry Ford too. He had a similar version of that. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Right. That's the same kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So I think that one thing that I was kind of thinking of is like, we should try to, because you mentioned it, you said Bitcoiners, you're kind of already here. You know what's going on. We don't need to convince you to buy Bitcoin. We obviously want to help you hodl in the sense of, grow your conviction, understand what you're holding, but start building the Citadel on your own. And it doesn't have to be like going out and buying a piece of property and actually, hammer a nail into it. It's taking small actions every day and becoming more sovereign, becoming more private, taking some of your energy and your wealth from that old system and putting more into Bitcoin. And I think the one thing that we can kind of do to reflect on every Monday is just kind of look back and say, hey, what did we do this week that moved us closer towards where we want to go? Because you can't do everything at once, and it's very overwhelming. I think when you think about it and you want to, run a node and you want to de-Google yourself and have a Graphene OS phone, like you can't do it all in 1 week. And so I think that a week's a good time. You can just say, okay, 1 week between this show Monday and next Monday, I want to do one thing and kind of move myself and my family closer towards that agency and sovereignty. And I think that if we can keep stacking those weeks, we're going to have a pretty good time with it. So that's what I would say. Just to figure out one thing you can do this week to kind of push yourself and your family in that direction. And then when we're here next week, we can do it all over again. And we just keep stacking those little wee wins.
100%. Mindset. Work on the gray matter between the ears. And the last thing I'll say too is check out, was it yesterday? We just dropped the podcast that I recorded with Jor and Forrest and Mason Ford having the strategy Bitcoin and stretch debate. So that was an awesome talk. So we've already got a couple thousand views on that on YouTube alone. So check that out. It's a good one. Really fun.
It was a good one.
So
I was a little bit hungover, a little bit tired, but we got through it.
we powered through. We made it. Great stuff.
It's been a week, and I'm still feeling the effects of Nashville. So that was that was quite the interview, but it was fun. We had a good chat. So yes, check that out. That's on Brandon's channel, and it was the last video you posted from yesterday, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thanks, Brandon.
Awesome.
It was been a slice. We'll be back here next week, and thanks everybody over in Rumble, Nostr, and on Brandon's channel as well. So thanks everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Adios.